Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Banned Books Week, so-called. I decided to do this show since I had to postpone it from yesterday to today. Anyway, I decided to cover Banned Books Week because there's a lot to say around just that one week. So I'm going to do some decoding. I'm going to talk to you about what it is, what I think it's not, and what it all means to me. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. But before we get started, I would like to ask you to please consider liking this broadcast, sharing this broadcast so more people can join us live and ask questions or make comments. Join us in the chat. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps support my work. There are other ways you can support me. They are listed above. I have a link tree. I have an affiliate program with Heroes of Liberty, which is a great book company. Bethany Mandel was a guest on my show. Fabulous books. Highly recommend them. You can go purchase books and I get a little tiny piece of it. Plus you get a discount, which is great. And I have some merch and I have a Subscribe Star and a local. So lots of ways you can support me depending on what you'd like to get in return. But I appreciate even just the likes and the comments and the participation. All of it helps. Hello, welcome. So, and if you're watching this on the replay, thank you for watching it. Please share, please consider subscribing, and let's get started without further ado. So let's talk about banned books. Now, you would think when you hear the word banned, you probably imagine that the book is banned. I mean, literally banned. You cannot get it. It's not available. We're going to spend the week using our freedom of speech to complain about the fact that somebody has violated our freedom of speech, because that's what banning is. When we think about our rights, we think about the right to speak and be spoken to and listen and, read and all these kinds of things, even associate with people and material that might be controversial. Our government might not like, our neighbors might not like, but it's our choice. Now, the thing about that is, though, we have a right to speak unimpeded, and we have a right to listen and all these things, but not anywhere all the time with every audience and for free. Like, I don't have a right to read any material handed to me for free. This doesn't imply material goods. It doesn't imply that someone's providing me with the speech. It doesn't, the so-called right to read just means unimpeded. The government cannot come along and take the book out of my hand if I put it there. So I put it there, my own steam. I went out to the store or Amazon or wherever, and I bought this book, Irreversible Damage, controversial book. We'll talk about this one. And, the transgender craze seducing our daughters. It's obviously critical of all of that. Now, I'm sitting on a park bench, reading this book, minding my business. Or an airplane for that matter, where I've bought a ticket to sit there. And I bought the book myself. Well, my right to read and my freedom of speech means that nobody, not the neighbor sitting next to me, not the flight attendant or the pilot, not some government air marshal can come and say, ma'am, we're going to need to remove that book from your hands and take it away from you because it is offensive to other people. This book that you own, that you purchased, with your own money, sitting here in the seat that you purchased. You get it. You get, I don't need to go over it. Okay. So those are my rights. They don't have a right to stop me from reading this book. But if I go to, let's say, for the sake of discussion, a public school, and the school board or the majority of the parents, taxpayers in that district, decide that they think this is a bit advanced for that public school library. Maybe it's not for them. Let's say it's a middle school. So 11 to 13-year-olds. And they decide, this is our daughters. They don't have kids. My 11 to 13-year-old doesn't have a child. So I'm going to think that plus some of the scary stuff and the big vocabulary and the sensitive topics. And it's probably not appropriate for the middle school age range. I'm just saying, not saying it's a book that other people, whatever. Just, I don't think in our limited space with our limited budget and what else we need to have the kids have available, that this is what we're going to feature. Just not going to have it on the shelves. Am I going to go and say, how dare you ban this book from the school library? No, it's not banned. It is not selected. If it made it in there somehow, if somebody said, hey, here are 10 free copies of Abigail Schreier's book, let's put it on the shelves of the middle school, and I'm the librarian, and I've got all kinds of other books to go through, and I'm running out of space, and I'm really not so sure that this is age appropriate, or that it should take up space from stuff, other material, I might say, I don't know, I'm going to deselect it. I'm going to take it off the shelf. I'm going to put it to the side, or we're going to send it up to the high school, or maybe we'll send it over to the community college, or we'll send it someplace else, because I don't think of all the books I could choose, this one should be here. Now, do I and my friends and get a whole group of parents together who think it is very, very important that people be questioning the gender ideology in our schools and go in and demand that these be put in the school immediately? And claim that our free speech is being violated and our children's right to read is being violated because they made a decision to remove it? No, probably not. On the other hand, if I head down to the middle school library and I find something, like maybe, let's take a look what we might find that might be a little less appropriate. Let's just take a look, shall we? How about, I made a little presentation. I got all fancy. Banned Books Week. Okay. What if I go down to that middle school library and I take a look around and, I walk in and I start seeing, and I'm like, wait, okay, so we got climate change and food insecurity. We got Young, Gifted, and Black, the Power Book, We Are Power, how nonviolent activism changes the world. We got Pride. We got Rainbow Revolution. We got Queer Heroes. We got Gay, Lesbian History for Kids. We got Your Rights as an LGBT Teen. We got, again, this is a middle school, in case you missed it, because I went by really fast. This is a middle school information center sent to me by a parent, by the way. Okay. And, coming out, Gay and Lesbian History for Kids, The Burning, Black Wall Street, and the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. Oh, look, some free speech handbook. That's nice. We got How Black Lives Matter, How to Fight Racism, stamped from the beginning, Ibram X. Kendi. We've got Me and White Supremacy. We've got the Racial Healing Handbook, How to Be an... You know what? I might change my mind. I might say, ordinarily, I would have said, librarian, that I might even agree with you that you pulled this book off the shelf to make room for other books. But I'm getting the distinct impression that your priorities are to shove other books in the children's face about politically charged topics, including gender. Let's go back to that, shall we? Yeah, including gender stuff. And Queer Heroes and Rainbow Revolutions and Pride and all that. And I'm not really seeing a whole lot of skepticism and curiosity about different points of view. It's really, really one-dimensional here in terms of, the controversy around these topics. I'm not saying remove all the books. Oh my God, remove them. They're terrible. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a case of priorities, and you're making it very clear that you, librarian and public school board or whoever is running all of this, your priority is that the kids believe what is in these books, all of which are political, all of which are from one side of each argument that it would be part of. Okay, they're all from one point of view. So whether it's this book or another one that's critical of all of this narrative, I'm thinking, yeah, I think you now have a responsibility to put this book into the library. Not only into the library, like hidden on a shelf somewhere dark where nobody's going to find it, but right out there, right on top, right next to the your rights as an LGBTQ teen. Because you know what? You know what one of those rights happens to be if they're lesbian or gay? Yeah, it's to be left alone to be lesbian or gay. It is not to be transed because they're a lesbian who looks very masculine or a gay boy who likes to wear makeup and cook and sew and dance and do things like that, that one might claim are feminine things to do. Yeah, one of her rights is for you adults to leave them the hell alone. Leave them alone. You put out all these books, they should be proud of who they are or whatever. Okay, guess what? That's your cue to not tell them they're in the wrong body. That's your cue not to project your homophobia, that you project onto the rest of us parents for being a little concerned about all of this and having none of this present. Yeah, that's your cue that something's wrong. So you want to talk about banned books week? Nobody's trying to ban these books. We're saying your priorities are FUBAR. You're making it abundantly clear you've politicized our school libraries. You're pushing gender ideology on our kids, including lesbian, bisexual, and gay children or pre-gay children. You are pushing something on them that could result in permanent harm. And you're not even attempting to counterbalance it. You are pushing racial essentialism on them, and you're not even attempting to balance it with alternate points of view. It's not that these are controversial. It's not that it's about race. It's not that it's about LGBT issues. It's that it's about only that. It's about emphasizing controversial books to the exclusion of every other possible topic. So when parents, whether it's, a group I might belong to or just individual parents, go to these libraries and they say, we have an issue here. This is getting to be a bit much. Your priorities are a little much here. This is what they're responding to. Because we don't believe for a second, we parents, that these kids are running headlong into the library and going, ooh, give me some of that. Some kids might be. But given the reading scores, I'm going to go with probably not. Probably they're going in and here's what's happening. They're just seeing, they've got this view. What's important to the grownups? What do the grownups want me to know? What are the topics I need to be concerned with? And what am I supposed to believe? What is the truth? Remember, this is the school. The kids go there. They assume these are the smart people. These are the people teaching them about what's important in the world. When you do displays like this, when you load up your shelves with books like these, and you don't include books like these intentionally, and we know that you do exclude them intentionally, you're sending a message to the children. This is what matters, that doesn't. All of these, by the way, that I'm looking at are nonfiction. Well, except for How to Be an Anti-Racist. That's, pure fiction. But you get what I'm saying. We're not talking about literature here. And then when we do talk about literature in a moment, you're going to be like, don't include what? They don't include controversial books from the other side. This one, Irreversible Damage, is critical of the transgender craze in our middle and high schools. This one takes the stories of detransitioners and children who've been harmed and tells their stories and explains what they've gone through and examines the possibility that maybe it is a craze, it's a trend, it's a social contagion more than it is a real organic thing that is happening with our children at young ages. We're not talking about adults who want to be transsexual. We're not talking about that. We're talking about middle school kids, elementary school kids, little kids, okay? And there's no balance. I'll just tell you guys right now, I personally, as a mother, as a former teacher, don't think this is age appropriate for middle school. I think high school, yes. Middle school, probably not. It's a bit over their head. But so are the books that you're seeing on the screen. So are many of these books. Okay. Some are not, but some absolutely are. This entire bottom row, these are books written for adults. There's much written for adults as this is. They're in a middle school library. So then I take a different view. My view adapts to what they're doing in the school library. And I would not go in and say, you have to remove these. You have to remove these. I would just say, if you're going to include these so prominently, you have an obligation. If, as you say, you care about a child's right to read, you care about intellectual curiosity and intellectual freedom, you care about the truth, you care about inquiry, you owe it to those children to do a better job of balancing this out and not making it so abundantly clear which direction you want them to go in the controversy area. Okay? Because yes, these are controversial books. If they were balanced, I would have a lot less of a problem with it. I think most parents would too. Now, that's just controversy. We haven't even touched on sex yet. I haven't gone to that. And some people might say, well, Deb, what's the difference? I mean, you're talking about books that are very controversial and the racial essentialism, I mean, that could cause all kinds of problems. But yes, that is true. But it's still at a little bit of arm's length to the child relative to graphic sex. Okay. So just to recap, they're calling banned books, or they're saying we want to ban books when what we want is balance. That's one of the things we want. We see this and we don't think these books are banned. First of all, when the first argument that you get from people in Banned Books Week is these moms and these moms groups want to ban the books because they're about race or sex or LGBT issues. They want to ban them because they're about those issues. I just showed you a whole bunch of books about those issues. I don't want to ban them. I'm not saying they should be removed from the library. I'm definitely not saying they should be removed from the library for those reasons. If I thought they should be removed, or any of them, any one or two or three of them should be removed from the library, it wouldn't be because they were controversial. It wouldn't be because they were about race or LGBT issues. It would be because they are there and promoted to the exclusion of every damn other thing. It would be reprioritization of the literature. It would be show a little sensitivity for the fact that not every kid needs to have this shoved in their face all the time. And it's that's causing issues. If a child goes individually and pulls a book like How to Be an Anti-Racist or Me and White Supremacy off the shelf individually, flips through it out of curiosity, starts asking questions about it, I actually would support that, approve of that. I think that's great. You can have some interesting conversations provided you keep to the Socratic method and don't start editorializing. There is a vast Pacific Ocean's worth of difference between what I just described and having all the books out like this in your face, like, look, white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy, racism. And if I have to go into depth to explain to you the difference, then, well, I don't. Anybody who would tell me I need to explain the difference is disingenuous. That's no reasonable adult fails to see the difference. Okay? It's just nuts. What one kid who's curious goes and looks for and consumes individually versus what all the kids go in and just sort of bathe in as far as adult priorities. The message is totally different and it's intentional. As I said, these kids don't read well enough. They don't read well enough that I'm worried that they're going in and reading every single one of these books. That there's one student out there going, I'm going to oh my God, I've now had a steady diet of all of this down to the last word. No, I don't believe that for a second. The other thing I know that this represents is what the adults are reading to the children, what the adults are pulling from for their lessons in class, what the adults are putting in their classroom libraries. So when you prominently display books like this in a school library, you are broadcasting what's important to everybody in that building, also to parents, by the way. And everything else gets lost. Why is a kid going to go to the library and get, for example, this book, Red Scarf Girl, a memoir of the Cultural Revolution, which I bet they don't even have in this library. In fact, I'd be shocked if they do, but let's say they do. I notice, interestingly enough, it's not there on display. This is a story of a young girl's life. This is a story of her being mistreated and her family experiencing discrimination. This is a story of terrible abuse and tyranny and turmoil that happened to this child. It's 1966, and 12-year-old Jili Yang has everything: brains, popularity, and a bright future in communist China. Then China's leader, Mao Zedong, launches the Cultural Revolution, and Jili's world begins to fall apart. Sounds like a struggle. Sounds like some of the struggles they're probably putting out there for the kids to read about, right? So they're forced to live in constant fear of arrest. And when her father is in prison, she faces the most difficult decision of her life: denounce him and turn her back on her family, or refuse to testify and sacrifice her future. This was even on the ALA book list. Okay, American Library Association. This was on their book list at one point in time. It was a notable children's book. Editor's choice at one point in time. Is it there? We're so worried about police brutality. What about the police in communist China? Can we have a conversation about them? No? It's only the police in the United States that are the problem? Interesting. So again, a book ban seems to me to be a misnomer. It's not a book ban. These books are not banned. People are questioning the wisdom and the intentions behind prioritizing and, amplifying the messages of very specific books. But let's go on. Remember I said there was a whole thing about sex? All right. First, I got to go back to here. Jonathan Friedman says, now being banned. Being banned. These books, he says, are being banned from Utah's public library, or Utah's school libraries. Now, what's fascinating is it says removed from the PEN America says they're being removed from the libraries, plural, of Utah's largest school district after an internal library audit determined that they contain sensitive material under a new law and do not have literary merit. Now, that's not fair to say. Many of these books, they're not parsing it. There's a list of 52 books. The truth is not that. The truth is some of these books were located in school libraries way out of their age appropriateness. Some of these books were not of literary merit, according to the people choosing. And some of these books were about sensitive adult topics that shouldn't have been in a public school library, period. Because these are public school students. They are minors. They are minors. The oldest child in there might be 18 just. So the vast majority of these students are captive audience. It's a public school district, taxpayer funded, and they are minor children. Now, one of them, I can't go through every book. There's 52. But you can go do your own homework and you can find out that Utah, they're taking this district and they're taking Utah, and then they want you to conjure up images of, Latter-day Saints, and it's probably because they're prudes, whatever. They want you to stereotype and be a bigot and all these other things instead of actually doing your homework and making them define the word banned. He says banned, they said being removed. Is being removed from a public school library the same as banning a book? Could a parent who actively wanted their child, for example, to read Queer, the Ultimate LGBTQ Guide for Teens, could they go on Amazon and buy it? Go to the public library and take it out if it were there? Could they? Yes, they could. Okay? So they're not banned. They're, like I said about how I wouldn't have a problem with this being removed from a middle school library, they're being removed. For a variety of reasons. You'd have to look at each individual one of the 52 to figure out why. The better question is, why were they in there in the first place? Now let's take a look at one of them. Do you see the book, This Book is Gay? See that one? Let's take a look at This Book is Gay. This Book is Gay is currently, right now, on the shelves of the middle school library right here in my city. 7th graders can go get this book. This Book is Gay. Here's a picture from just opening up. Just open up to page 200. What do we see? In addition to a little diagram of a naked male. Here is a diagram of a cisgender boy. First of all, we're introducing the term cisgender, which a whole lot of people, myself included, reject. That is a controversial term. It is not a fact. We are now in a middle school. A middle school child picks this up even as an individual, but definitely if it's just sitting up there where it's read to them or something. And they think cisgender is this accepted term that, it's like science. It's just like boy, just like male. No, it's not. There are a lot of us that see that term and just go, ew. That's no. There is a male and a female. This is a male. This is not a cisgendered anything. Cis is a slur as far as a lot of people are concerned. Again, I am one of them. So we have that. We just have a first, right out of the gate, we have a term that is like, whoa. Okay? If you're also a boy, you're probably aware which parts feel nice when you touch them. But here's a rough guide. Trans men may have slightly different bodies. So now they're talking to a middle school boy, or maybe girl, I guess, I don't know, about grown men, trans men. Not trans boy, trans men. Okay? Then, whoops, sorry, much too far. It starts giving instructions on how to have sex. Very clear, explicit instructions. Sex should always start with a kiss. We keep going. How to treat the testicles, what to do with your bum and what's up there and stuff. But 2 cisgender men can pleasure each other in a variety of fun ways, it says. Now, let me ask you this, parents. Do you send your children to school to learn how to pleasure each other? In the school, in the library. Do you think it's okay for them to go get this book and learn how to do this? Again, if you want your son to read this book, or your daughter or whatever, that's your business. You have a sovereign right to raise your child the way you want. I am not going to sit here and tell you how to raise your children. I might not want mine hanging out with yours if this is what you think is appropriate reading material for a 7th grader. But, again, we're probably not even going to cross paths. We probably aren't going to ever cross paths, and that's fine. You stay over there. I'll be over here. This is America. Yay. Okay? But this is a public school. Taxpayer funded. That means some of my money is paying to put this book in there. Even if it weren't. Even if one of the groups, one of the activist groups, or Bill Gates himself or whatever, were showing up with a box full of copies of this book for free. If children are captive audience, they got to be there. They've got to go to the library, and this is prominently on display, or this is being put out, and this is a book that you should read, which I haven't seen it. I'm told it's prominently on display in our local middle school, taking their word for it. But even if it's not, it's there. And I think this should be between the parent and the child and whatever. But let's see. Here's what it says. Something they don't teach you in school, why would they, is that in order to be able to come at all, you or your partner may need to finish off with a handy. Why would anyone expect them to teach you that in school? This is in school. This is in school. A lot of people find it hard. I'm not going to go through the rest of that, but it does describe what a good handy is. It's all about the wrist action, according to the book. And there's more, they use words like mega combo handy. So we've got it all translated down for like the kid lingo. This is inappropriate. And then how about the ins and outs of gay sex? Ooh, double entendre. This is inappropriate to have available to everyone's child in a public school setting. We're not saying the book should be banned. I am not saying no one should sell it anywhere. I am not for a second saying you parents should be arrested and your kids, because you bought your kid this book. That's between you and your kid. It's not a ban if we remove it. That's what I'm saying. Now let's go to what's going on in, I guess, the Decoded school district. Don't know where that is. Substitute teacher was left explicit instructions on what book to read to the children. So remember I said I'm sure they're reading books to the children? Okay. This is how I know that. Plus I've been a sub. I'm a substitute teacher for Dysart School District. Today, I subbed for a third grade classroom. The teacher instructed me to read this book to the students after lunch. Question, shouldn't parents give their permission for a teacher to read this book? Now let's take a look, shall we? Born Ready is the name of the book. Born Ready, the story of a boy named Penelope. A boy named Penelope. Your parents told me you're a boy. Is that true? I think like a boy. I feel like a boy. What? Hold the phone. How does what appears to be a third grade girl with short hair, but how does an 8-year-old know what a boy thinks like? She's never been a boy. Even another 8-year-old boy doesn't know what other boys think like. They've only been themselves. I'm going to hammer this point home. You're going to hear me say this about 500 more times. I don't know what it feels like to be a woman. I am a woman. I definitely don't know what it feels like to be a man because I've never been one. But this notion that you can feel like or think like least of all something you've never been. Why don't I say I think like a dog? I think like a Malamute. Not even any dog, a Malamute. I'm specifically a particular breed of dog because I think like one. What? That's absurd. You cannot think like something you've never been, and you cannot feel like someone you've never been. It takes most people, most of their lives, to get really in touch with how they feel inside their own skin about themselves. Never mind projecting out to what other people feel like to be them. But here we just take it as like, yeah, of course, that makes total sense. Because the teacher says, then the kid goes on to say, I might look different from other boys, but yes, I'm sure I'm a boy. I'm 8. I'm also sure Santa Claus is real. The tooth fairy comes to my house. And, what did somebody say here before? Horseradish is made of horses. I was about 7 before I realized meat came from animals. Had no idea. It's not like someone sat me down and said, that is the muscle of a cow. Probably wouldn't have eaten it. So good thing they didn't. I don't know what I thought it was, but I sure didn't think it was like cow muscle. Never thought about it. I just thought it came from cows and I had some abstract notion of how, and then I didn't really want to know any more about it than that. That was good enough for me at the age of 7 or 8. But I'm sure I'm a boy. Okay. Well, Penelope, today you're my teacher, the adult says. You're my teacher. I guess that could be true. They're reading this to a class full of kids. Grandpa G slams his hand down on the table. Whatever that says. In my language of twee, gender isn't such a big deal. We don't use gender pronouns. Okay, you don't use gender pronouns because that's your language. And some languages are super gendered. So that means what exactly? Am I supposed to think suddenly that because something is masculine or feminine in French or German, that it's now like, got a personality? That's an absurd statement. Their language doesn't have gendered pronouns. Whoop-de shit. But that's meaningful in some way. Oh, this man's language approves of, whatever. I don't understand everything, but I do know Grandpa G is smiling. Good, let's eat cake. So we have a story that is at an 8-year-old's level of, hey, cake makes it all better, but we're talking about an incredibly complex, extraordinarily controversial concept known as gender. And now we skip ahead to where it says, oh, mama gets quiet. I love you, mama, but I don't want to be you. Well, that's good because you can never be her because she's her and you're you. I want to be papa. Can't do that. Can't be papa. Anyone catching on though that it's pretty normal for kids to want to identify with one or both of their parents? They might even alternate. I wanted to be my dad. I couldn't stand my mom. Hated her. I mean, she left, so that was, part of the reason. But I didn't actually want to be my dad. I wanted to be like my dad. I identified with him. I tried to be more boyish. I was already pretty masculine as kids go, but that was the parent I identified with. My personality was more like his. My temperament was more like his. I looked a little bit more like him, especially, where I would otherwise be smiling and things like that. So, that's normal. But if you translate it to another child sitting in the class, listening to a story that I want to be like my dad, does that mean I want to be my dad? I want to be like my mom, says the little boy who's with mom most of the time. Maybe I want to be mom. Do you see how insidious these messages can be? That you just make it like that's, you identify with mom or dad. That means maybe you want to be them. I don't want tomorrow to come because tomorrow I'll look like you. That's suicidal freaking ideation. Put in 8-year-old terms. I don't want tomorrow to come because tomorrow I'll look like you. Please help me, mama. Help me be a boy. And this is where the responsible parent would step in and say, I can't do that, honey. Tomorrow will come and you'll be fine. And as uncomfortable as you feel right now, you'll get through it. Let me tuck you in. Let's read a story. Okay. Maybe we'll go read a story about girls who like to do things that are traditionally boys do. Let's read about Amelia Earhart. Let's read about, who else? Who else was a very powerful woman who did sort of masculine things? Let's go find some books about people just like you. My little gender nonconforming daughter. But mom doesn't go, okay, honey, I will indulge your 8-year-old fantasy and medicalize you. But apparently that's exactly what the author of this book does, because Jodi Patterson is the author of The Bold World, a memoir of family and transformation. It was Family Circle magazine's Family Circle most influential mom in 2018. Jodi is also the chair of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation board. If you go look into Human Rights Campaign Foundation, you will find a treasure trove of agenda-driven stuff about children and trans ideology. She's the mother of 5 children, 2 of whom are self-proclaimed gender nonconformist, one transgender and another gender queer. Jodi raises her family in Brooklyn, New York. I'm shocked. Okay. So when parents go and they say, we want a book like this removed from the school library, again, not a ban. We want it removed because we think, especially since you're having the substitute teacher or the teacher, that matter, or the librarian, read it aloud to the children. So they're not even reading it themselves. That means the person reading it, if I do a read loud, I do the voices, I do, whatever. The kids have questions, I answer the questions, and they're counting on it happening here too. What do you mean it feels like a boy? How can she be a boy? What does this mean? My mom said, and what do you think's happening next? You think the teacher's going, let's just finish this story. Let's just get through it. Or do you think this teacher's saying, yeah, I know, that seems kind of whack. What do you guys think? Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Probably not. More like is, but yes, this is true. And if you like boy things, you might be a boy too. And yes, anyone can be whatever they want to be. That's exactly what's happening. So it's not even just they want it inaccessible to the child, they want it inaccessible to the teacher. because the teacher is going to be like this teacher. Well, Penelope, you're my teacher. You 8-year-old and your 8-year-old fantasy of being someone else have just taught me how to live in a fantasy world. I'm just going to help you go along with that. God forbid I should actually teach you anything about reality in the real world. No. And I'll be fair here. I don't think it's the teacher's job to do that either. In other words, I don't think it would be let's say you had a little 8-year-old kid who's Jody's kid, goes to school, says, I'm trans, I'm this, I'm that, whatever. Okay, nice to meet you. Mm-hmm. Moving on. That's it. Especially if the parent knows about it. Parent's on board. Parent wants this. Parent's raising the kid to be like this. None of my business. I can disagree with it till the cows come home. I personally think it's abusive to concretize delusion in an 8-year-old child. So I would be very, very uncomfortable. I'm not sure what I would do in that situation. I probably would hope I'd have the stones to quit rather than affirm an 8-year-old girl claiming to be a boy. At most, if I had to keep my job, I probably would just refer to Penelope as Penelope. That's all I would do. Because Penelope doesn't seem too keen to change her name, just that she's dressed like a boy or whatever. So I would just say Penelope, and I'd leave the pronouns out of it. But I don't think it's right to turn it into a concrete, that which is delusion. And I would steer very clear of the topic to the best of my ability. And if the other kids started saying, I don't get it, whatever, just say Penelope's Penelope. Just be kind to Penelope. That's all you need to know. And I would drop it. I'm not going to sit there and tell all the other mothers' children they have to accept that this is reality or true. I'm not going to get into this conversation. I wouldn't read this book. I would not pull this book off the shelf and read it to my third grade class. I'd be reading anything. I'd be reading freaking Charlotte's Web as a read aloud. I wouldn't be reading this. But there are teachers who will. There are teachers who are going to be encouraged to, in fact, required to get their, equity cred and their DEI cred and all that. And that is why many parents want books like this removed from the library, because we don't trust teachers' judgment anymore. We have seen too many TikTok teachers talk to children and brag about it, about sex, about their sex life, about their gender, and present to our children as fact that which is not fact, that which is their opinion. It would be like a teacher presenting their religion to our children. We don't want that either. Which is why there are no Bibles and prayer books and other things in the public school library. It's not because we're worried the little kid's going to go in the library and pick the prayer book and start reading it. It's because we don't want the teacher thinking that's an approved piece of material to go back to the classroom and sit and read from like it's the truth for everybody. Well, that's exactly what this is. It's not scientific truth. This is an opinion. It might be your opinion, and that's fine. It is America. You're entitled to that at home. Okay, we don't teach opinions to kids like this. So that is why when we go back to the list of the 52, I would rather people take this kind of a list and go through it one by one and ask themselves why they think the parents in that district wanted it removed. Now, I can give you another example real quick, and it's a book I've read. This is Forever by Judy Blume. It's an old book. It's not even new, okay? It is about a girl's first sexual experience at the age of 17. So it's rather quaint, actually, that the girl's having her very first sexual experience beyond kissing at 17. That's almost traditional, okay, by today's standards. When I was in fifth grade. So I was about 10, okay? I found this book on my mother's shelf. She was not living with us anymore, but she left all her books and all her stuff, and that was sitting on the shelf. Now, I'd read all the other Judy Blumes, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, blah, 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 Deanie, Flubber, was it Flubber? Not Flubber, whatever. Anyway, I'd read all those other books. And I saw Judy Blume, and I'm like, oh, it's a Judy Blume book. I'll read it. 10 years old. I had no idea what was going on. Like, I was like, I knew about the kissing and stuff, but some of the other terms, rubber, it's like, hard, no idea what was happening. I couldn't picture it. I was like, what are they doing? Like, why? So what did I do? I did what any other little 10-year-old would do. I brought it to school and asked my friends. We met up in the bathroom, the girls' room. We're like, I'm reading this book and I think they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing because they're kind of sneaking around about it. Do you guys know what this means? Do you guys know what this means? They hadn't the foggiest idea. We like rubber. They're like, do you put it on your feet? Like what? No idea. We thought rubbers were those things you put over your shoes. No idea. Okay. This is my 1975, 76. And so I had this book. I read it. I said, can you make heads or tails of it anyway? I loan it out to one of my friends. She takes it home, reads the book. Her mom finds the book. Her mom comes to the school and pitches a huge fit. Where did this book come from? Of course, the school did not have this book in the library. The school's like, so we do not keep this book in the library of the elementary school. Somebody must have brought this book to school. And I'm like, it's my book. Dumbass. I didn't have parental supervision. My dad's off at work. My mom left us. I'm basically a latchkey kid. I'm taking books off the grown-up shelf. I see an author I recognize. I'm like, okay, I read it. No clue what's happening. Somebody else's mom finds it, and I become the pariah of 5th grade. I was practically an outcast. You can't play with her. You can't go to her house. She's not properly supervised. What is this? I mean, looking back on it, I almost don't blame the mom. I'll be honest. I wasn't properly supervised. I didn't do those things, but I still wasn't properly supervised. But it wasn't an appropriate book for 10-year-olds. Now, like I said, we didn't really understand what was going on, so we weren't really corrupted by it, but it still wasn't appropriate for us to read. So maybe they pulled Forever off the shelves because it belonged in a different library, or they just felt the themes were too adult to have down in the school library. Maybe they felt like that. Or what could also be true, I'll be honest with you, is it is still rather tame. As books about first sexual experience go, it's very tame by today's standards. Maybe they pulled it because it was old-fashioned. Maybe they pulled it because for, I don't know, any number of other reasons. That's the other thing I want to make clear to you is that books are pulled by all different kinds of parents. To Kill a Mockingbird has been pulled out of California districts because Black parents, I think 3 of them in a district, had an issue with the white savior complex they accused Atticus Finch of having. So they didn't want To Kill a Mockingbird in the school, and they pulled it. Books get pulled for all kinds of reasons. These 52, we're assuming, are all pulled by like conservative right-wing parents. I haven't gone through every book on the list. For all we know, Forever was pulled because it was 2 white teenagers having extremely white relationship with very pedestrian white sex. I don't know. Because it was really pretty tame as things go. Just not appropriate for elementary school. So that's that. Okay. I was busy putting together a list of my own of books to try to figure out, what books might be banned in the libraries that people who are against that display that I showed you might want. And I got quite a few submissions. I'm going to put it together at some point in a presentation that I'll make available to you guys to see if you can find out if they are at your library. We've got the Irreversible Damage book I showed you. Race Marxism by James Lindsay, Debunking Howard's Inn and Debunking the 1619 Project. Equal is Unfair. That one is this book. It's a great book, by the way. This is Don Watkins and Yaron Brook. It's about income inequality and how, it's really misguided of us to fight it. Okay. Bet that's not in the library, school or otherwise. The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. How much you want to bet that's not in the high school library? How about just anything by Thomas Sowell? Anything at all, really? Red, White, and Black, America, Last Best Hope by William Bennett, Ayn Rand, any of it. Charles Murray, any of it. In Defense of Elitism. Actually, William Henry was a card-carrying Democrat his whole life, but if you read that book, you're into CRT and things like that, you would hate him. So, Dumbing Us Down, John Taylor Gatto. I mean, there are tons and tons of books. People were sending me a huge list I have so many here. Books about communism. Lots of books about communism. Everything by Mises, and so on and so forth. I doubt they're there. Anyway, so next thing I want to do is talk to you about safe libraries. This is a blog that I hope you guys will subscribe to or pay attention to. The author of this blog, Dan Feynman, he's going to be on Thursday. He's coming on for an interview. He's been fighting for safe libraries and against the ALA and the school librarians and all these people for years because they are sneaky little, you know what's. I'm going to go ahead and read you some of his latest, but I'll put the link to it in the chat so you can read it on your own as well and bookmark it and share it out there. Okay. Public librarians love banned books. They can pimp them to the public and use them as a prop against their political enemies, who of course are usually conservatives. Many of these books are innocuous and make the public gasp, how could this book have been banned? A lot of times they were never banned, only challenged. But that doesn't matter to the ALA, that's the American Library Association, or the library community at large. As long as they can take the moral high ground and maintain power over the collection meant for the public, it's all good. So that is the key point here, right? If you listen to some of these librarians speak at their presentations and their summits and their thises and their that's, they act like they are the guardians of the Grail, the holy of holies. They act like these libraries belong to them. They act like they're, the money for them just magically falls out of the sky. They act like the Bill of Rights protects free books for everyone, but only the ones they want you to read, not, like every free book, but, the free books that the librarians, the guardians of all knowledge, decide that we should have. And then they turn around in a twist of irony so bizarre. It's laughable when you listen to them and tell you that you are the one limiting the right to read and freedom of expression and, learning and my favorite, access to the truth. Access to the truth. Yeah. It can be beneficial. Wait, here's what he says. Librarians know banned books get traction with the public. If not in the local area, then anywhere they can promote the outrage. It can be beneficial to a librarian's career to fight the good fight on the supposed behalf of the community. They can enhance the woke Marxist agenda of the local school or run a program intended to indoctrinate children into becoming queer and receive high fives, ball gags, and job offers. It really comes down to the epitome of virtue signaling. If they can claim a book is being challenged or banned or someone's trying to ban it, they get tons of attention. Money flows in. Free books come their way, especially books that align with their politics. And at this point, the ALA, the school librarians, all of them are completely captured. They can get money. They can get all the stuff. It's like a club for far, far left-wing activists. They know what we all know, what I said at the outset, that what the community sees them prioritize and promote and stick on display and have story hours about is what supposedly matters. So even if it's not true, even if the majority disagrees with it, even if every neighbor on your street thinks the library is like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs when it comes to politics, they'll still feel like the other street doesn't. The town next door doesn't. Like they'll believe that they're in the minority because of what's in the library. They use that public space, public money, public domain to project a mainstream attitude towards things that simply doesn't exist. It simply doesn't exist. Now, interestingly enough, libraries are, used less and less. That there's your mainstream speaking for you. They're like, yeah, I'm not going in there. I don't want to go there because there's nothing there for me. Okay. Also, people just read less in that way. They're reading online, they're playing games, they're doing other things. So the people who read are a smaller subset too. Thing is, the people who read vote. The people who read are very active in their schools. So it does matter, but they want you to believe this is mainstream thought, and it's not. It's extremist thought. Often the library board is left hanging when a controversial book appears on the shelf. They get calls, emails, text, letters, smoke signals, and severed animal heads, accompanied by "How could you, groomer, and I demand your resignation," or "Way to go. Could you start a program teaching kids how to give BJs with bananas," which is far worse. Sometimes a librarian is an honest person who orders whatever ALA or Amazon recommends, which can be a setup in itself, but there are plenty of willing librarians ready to take up the noble cause of depravity. So he's right. There are some librarians who just get what they get, and they're like, all right, let's put it on the shelf, and then the challenges begin. But at this point, they're fairly well captured. I'm going to show you something. This is the upcoming events list for the School Librarian Learning Network, I think. And this shows you their calendar. So we've got today, here's what they had. These are just events. You could click on each individual one of them and you could attend an event. Genderqueer in Virginia Beach, Banned Books Week, Free Expression for Young People, Banned Books Instagram, The Censored Classroom, Banned Books Week discussion, The Kids Are All Right, Youth Activists on Fighting Censorship, live tour of the Banned Books Museum, when books are banned. Obviously, it's Banned Books Week. There's going to be a lot of that. But if you go back in time, so we'll just go back to August, okay? And you're still going to find Centering Black Children, Exploring the Misinformation Landscape. Let's see. Radicalizing the Archives. There's more stuff too. There's more LGBT stuff. There's a lot of it. So you can go through and you can find Defending LGBTQ Literature in Oklahoma, Fighting Book Banning, Why LGBTQ and Comics Belong in Schools and Libraries. So they're pretty well captured by one particular political persuasion. And then when you go and look at who's actually pulling books, remember I said the books get pulled for all kinds of different reasons? Well, here's one, The Quiet Culling of Children's Classics. Remember I said it's about priorities? Critics call them book banners, book burners, even fascists, but parents simply do not want anyone exposing children to graphic, obscene, and profane material behind their backs. Like I said, if I'm sitting next to my child, big difference. This disingenuous name calling obscures the truth. Too many school librarians have already banned books. So at the other side of the coin, remember I said, do you guys have this book in your library? Do you have Abigail Schreier's book? Do you have Equals Unfair? Do you have Red Scarf Girl? I have more. I've got like a stack of books I bet they don't have in the libraries. So in 2021, CNN wrote, libraries oppose censorship, so they're getting creative when it comes to offensive kids' book. Offensive? Offensive kids' books? Yeah, so it's up to librarians then to determine whether those books and others with racist content still deserve a spot. Like, Huck Finn, To Kill a Mockingbird, anything with the N-word. Not good. Unless the N-word is used like it's used in rap. Then it's okay. So you can use the word. It just depends who's using it and in what context. So they don't call what they do banning. They call it culling. They call it, like curating. They call it prioritizing, reprioritizing. But when we ask for books to be removed, it's banning. You're banning a book. All right. What happens to when children's classic books are sidelined? Do these great time-tested classics become less circulated? Does the ALA encourage librarians to weed out less circulated books? I imagine so. They recommend the crew procedures for weeding books from the Texas State Library Archives Commission. Under the Easy Reader Picture Books, weed any book that has not circulated in the past 2 years. For juvenile fiction, copyright is less important than use, but consider weeding anything that hasn't circulated in 2 years. So do you think it's likely then that some really great classics might get weeded out, especially when you're bringing in dozens and dozens and dozens of books like A Boy Called Penelope? How are you going to circulate the classic books when you're overwhelming the teachers, the students, the displays, and everything with the brand new book published yesterday about the latest, greatest thing? And so they get gone. But we don't call them book banners, do we? We don't. I disapprove of what they're doing, but I still don't call it a ban. It's not a ban. But that's in quotes here because the way they use ban is similar. It's like whatever I feel like is a ban. You take books I don't like, it's a ban. You put books in, it's what? Misinformation. So then let's take a look at, again, right nearby, there is a controversial book being debated right here in the next county over to me. And the book is called Looking for Alaska. It tells the story of grief, hope, and youth adult relationships. Okay. It's a coming of age, first sexual experience book kind of thing. All right. And I was unfamiliar with the book. So I did a little research and I found out something very interesting about this particular book that they want to ban. In fact, this is what they said. They actually had they asked the interns that they had, the student interns that they had at the school board, to leave the room so they could read sections of the book, explicitly sexual sections of the book aloud to illustrate the point, why it's controversial. And a couple of the board members said, it says the book was challenged by several states. School leaders recently discovered the novels in their school library and referred the book to the school board's Literacy and Supplemental Education Committee. And one member says, I'm transparently saying that 2 of the books were actually missing, and I'm wondering where they are, but my guess is they're probably under some kid's mattress. And they, want them taken off the shelves. Now, I went Googling around about this book. Look what I found. It was a Hulu made for TV miniseries. I will direct your attention to the rating. TVMA. TVMA. For those who are unfamiliar with the MA rating, it is 17-year-olds and above. Okay. Because it means graphic. Here's what it actually says. Programming rated TVMA in the United States by the TV Parental Guidelines signifies content for mature audiences. It corresponds to the MPA's R-rating programs with this rating. Programs with this rating are generally not suitable for children or individuals under 17. Some sources say 18. This content is only made for mature audiences because it contains mature themes such as gore, sexual violence, strong language, nudity, substances, smoking, and sex. The rating is rare on free-to-air television because of the FCC regulations on obscene programming. So again, there may be parents who even let their teens watch that particular show. It's very possible that they let their kids who are 16, 15, whatever, watch an MA show individually with supervision, without whatever, in the privacy of their own homes. Or the kids snuck and did it, but they knew they were sneaking to do it. I wasn't born yesterday. I'm sure that happened too. But again, time, manner, place. There is a message we send to our children when we, the adults, normalize MA topics to the point where teachers can assign them, teachers can teach them, teachers can put them in front of kids whose parents know this would not be appropriate for my child, or I don't want this to be in my child's reading, material or their viewing material. And without the parents having a say in it, they are basically making that decision. That child, this child here, that child there is ready for mature content. And that is not a decision for any librarian or any school teacher to make. That is a decision for parents to make. And as I said, if they don't get to make it because the child took it upon him or herself to sneak while the parents were out to dinner or something, the child at least knows I was sneaking and doing something I wasn't supposed to do, which is incredibly powerful as far as self-limiting behavior. You kind of know. And people say, well, that's why it's bad, because you're making it taboo. You're making it forbidden fruit. Yes. And that serves the purpose too. I hate to break it to you folks, but like when teenagers are inhibited by, getting caught at doing something they're not supposed to do, or they know their parents wouldn't want them to do, they tend to do it less. It tends to work. The only time it goes the other way is when the parents are really dogmatic about it. Like, I'm going to punish you and lock you up and do all these things. Then sometimes it counteracts it. But if you set ground rules and boundaries and say, I don't want this for you because reasons, and it's inappropriate and I don't want you doing this, right? But it's very clear because you love them and you don't think they're ready for it, etc. If they then behind your back break the rule, what do they know? They know it's not what you wanted for them. It doesn't suddenly become more appealing. Talk to teenagers. They'll tell you all about this. They'll tell you what the line is between I'm going to break your rules because they're rules and thanks for setting ground rules and boundaries for me, mom and dad, because it kind of like kept me reined in a little bit. All right. And that may be different for every kid, even within the same family, but it's a decision parents should make. It's a decision parents have a right to make. And teachers and librarians don't. Certainly school boards don't. So let's see. I don't want to run out of time because I do have a hard stop at 7. But you know, what's interesting to me is if you go over the history of banned books, and there are plenty of documents about it, you'll find they define banned books as banned. And most of them were banned for, you know, about like reasons relating to sex. Most of them, it's because of sex. Okay. Not because of race or something. But what they're going to do now with this week is they're going to try to use this week as a propaganda piece to persuade you parents that you just don't want the kids talking about race. You just don't want the kids talking about sex or learning about sex. You're a prude and you're a racist. That's what they're using banned books week for. So all this nuanced stuff that I just showed you, all the whole, hey, it's about priorities, we don't want to ban, blah, 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 blah. Or even, you know, hey, if you want to have all those books, if you want to have that this book is gay and you really desperately want it in the school library, and there's like a whole crew of parents who want it in the school library and I'm outnumbered 10-1 and I don't want to remove my child from the school, could we compromise? And that's what parents are asking for. At least in my county, they're asking for a compromise. They're saying, could you not put it prominently on display where all the kids are going to see it? Could you tell the teachers not to use it for read aloud? Could you put it behind the counter and have the kids have to get like a permission slip to go access it? Could we do that? Could you meet me halfway? That's still, I think, very generous, because I don't think some of these things are appropriate to have there at all when you consider what they're displacing. But I did want to show you some more. I went and followed the Banned Books Week Twitter hashtag. And you've got things like Freedom to Read projects. A lot of states have their own Freedom to Read, but Freedom to Read project is a big thing. And this is what they're saying. This is what they're claiming in Florida the parents are doing. They're saying, a media specialist tried to explain the challenge process after being directed to remove books. Instead of listening, the superintendent threatened her job if she continued to defy his order. I would bet $100 that this didn't go down that way. Whenever you read these scenarios, this is a part of their propaganda. They sound so reasonable, so kind, so fair, so burdened. Book fairs, reading rewards programs, and banned books week celebrations were paused, canceled, or no longer recognized in some districts. Oh, the horror. Maybe because they're a farce. Maybe because the books are not banned. Book fairs, reading awards programs, and, you know, maybe because they were specific to certain kinds of books. That happens a lot too. Let's have a book fair of LGBTQ books. Let's have a book fair of only about anti-racist books. Let's give reading awards programs to people who read Stamped from the Beginning or the LGBT books. They're getting super sneaky about this, you guys. They're calling it a book fair. They're not telling you the details of what kind of books. But then you might read this, or if you're sort of like a low info kind of person and go, those terrible people, why are they canceling book fairs? Don't you want the children to read? Yes, please. We want the kids to read. How about a book fair that's an actual book fair with all different kinds of books? Not just, you know, merchandise characters from, you know, like the whatever, Lord of the Rings, whatever books. There's a lot of that crap too that gets put out in book fairs, and LGBT stuff or anti-racist stuff. How about like actual books, classic books? Maybe there's something else to be done instead. Maybe they canceled the book fair because they thought that it was unfair to the kids who can't afford to buy books. Maybe it was canceled by the parents who said it was a white supremacist racist event in the first place because they're too poor to buy the books. I don't know. And neither do you, because they're not telling you. They're putting a little snippet in there and acting like it's all connected. Yes, this really happened in 2022. No context. School board members attempted to run their districts on their own terms when they pushed for their qualifiers to become the standard. Yes, one even defined age appropriate by what can be read in church. Again, I have a sneaking suspicion that that came down to somebody reading aloud from Genderqueer or This Book Is So Gay and saying, you know, it was somebody go, how do you know that's perfect? Well, you know, if I can't read it aloud here at the school board meeting and I can't read it in church, it's probably not age appropriate for the elementary school. And that gets translated to, they said it has to be read aloud in church. Those terrible religious people. They're disingenuous. They lie. They dissemble. They make you look ridiculous. Their goal is to make parents who are concerned about their children's well-being and, you know, and time and learning and all these things. The goal is to make you feel stupid, feel ridiculous, and to turn educated parents who love books against their perceived enemies, which would be like, I don't know, some kind of throwback to the 1950s who doesn't exist. They want you to sit there and assume that every member of, let's say, Moms for Liberty is trying to ban books. No one is trying to ban books. Least of all, anyone from Moms for Liberty. This goes back to, this is from this month, okay? Book battle plays out in public schools. More novels are pulled. This is also so disingenuous. They talk about this banned book club, blah, blah, blah. According to PEN America, they lie. There were nearly 1,600 actions taken in school districts to ban more than 1,100 titles. Well, very misleading. An action taken to remove a book or restrict a book is an action. That doesn't mean 1,600 books were pulled. It doesn't mean they're inappropriate requests. It doesn't mean anything. They just put it that way and it looks so scary. So then they talk about how it's, you know, these are political groups and these efforts to ban are just they're so political. So Tiffany Justice, who is the co-founder of Moms for Liberty, stepped up and told the truth. Do you think anyone's going to get to it halfway down the page? Probably not. So I'm going to amplify it here. What she says is, I mean, there's not two sides on this issue. There are moms who love their kids who don't want pornography in school. And then there are people who do want pornography in school. I think that the book issue has been used to try to marginalize and vilify parents. And the truth is there is no place for pornography in public schools, Justice told Miller. She added that the group has never been political and involved with any political parties. That is a fact. That is a fact. Our moms are not political. This is something that I think has been assumed and is really wrong. A lot of our moms have never really been involved in the political process at all. Maybe they voted for president, but I would say around 40% really never voted in school board, local elections. It's not something they really were involved in, but we woke up. Also true. I've met hundreds of these people. Okay. I'm in my own local Moms for Liberty group. I can assure you it's not a political organization. These are people who are just concerned that there's material being highlighted, prioritized, shoved in the kid's face that is age inappropriate, pornographic, and it needs to be at least restricted so that parents, not the school, not the teachers, not the school board even, can decide what students should see. And then people turn around and say, well, you want to decide for everybody else what they should see. No, we don't. If you want your child to read genderqueer, then as I said before, you can have your child read genderqueer on your own time and your own dime, or you can ask the school to put it behind the desk and have a permission slip that you want your child reading mature material. You're fine with that. They can have a list. And when they check the child's library card, be like, yep, you can have it. Here you go. Now, they might show it to somebody else. There's nothing we can do about that. But as I said, there's a giant difference between read this book. It's up on the display. Here you go. And here's your assignment from genderqueer. And a kid takes a book out and sneakily looks at it with another friend. Can you believe this stuff? Don't like that. I'm not saying I approve of it, but we're not trying to be micromanaging every last little thing everybody reads. Just let's be reasonable. Let's be reasonable here. And I'm sorry, but this book is so gay, is exactly the kind of thing that we're trying to keep away from the youngest of kids who don't need to be seeing it. And frankly, I don't think it should be in schools at all. But that's still not a book ban. What else? Let's see. At least 110 titles had advisory labels placed on them by a district because Florida Citizens Alliance, a conservative group that promotes school choice, deemed them inappropriate for schools. So they're taxpayers. They're funding the schools. You're forcing them to fund the schools. They're a citizen group. The people employed by the school district are paid for by those citizens. Why is this such a hard concept for these people to wrap their minds around? They're not your children. It's not your money. Figure it out. It's not complicated. Now we have Pantheon Books. This is a publisher dedicated to protecting the freedom of expression and carry an obligation to protect writers from censorship. They're not being censored. You published the freaking book. You published it. When the government comes along and says, you can't use naughty words in your book, you can't write a book about that, now you're being censored. Okay? Even if Amazon says, we're not going to sell your book, and we're the biggest bookseller in the world, we're not going to sell your book because reasons. Maybe now you might have a leg to stand on that you're being a little bit censored or restricted. Not legally by a private company, but okay? But it is absurd to say what they are saying. Why you should care about banned books. As a reader, it's important to have an informed, engaged democracy. We don't have a democracy. Thank God. And if we did, you wouldn't like it, Pantheon Books, because in a town, in a city, in a county, in a state, there was a majority of those conservatives that you don't like so much, they would just vote away your ability to publish that book or sell it in their state. Nope, can't sell this book. It's profane. We, the democracy, we, the Democratic majority, the mob, have decided thusly. So I promise you don't want a fully engaged democracy that doesn't agree with you. And it says engaged as well as access to stories by BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices. Access? It's important to have access to these stories. Who's denying people access? The only people who have the power to do that, really, like I said, would be government, and they can't because of the Constitution. And you, the publisher, who could decide not to publish it. You and every other publisher out there. And even then, they could self-publish and people could have access. Yay. As an educator, book bans and challenges are paving the way for even broader censorship efforts around entire topics from student curriculum, particularly racial, LGBTQ, and gender issues. Oh my God. This is hyperbolic in the extreme. We go from, please don't have your entire display be devoted to anti-racist and gender issues and have a little balance. And could you take out the explicit MA content and maybe put it behind a desk? Maybe, or at least keep it in the high school where the kids are, post-pubescent. At least, could you do that? Pretty please. We go all the way to, they're not going to be allowed to discuss race or LGBT issues at all, or gender. Now, I'm okay with this one. Not going to lie. I don't think this should be discussed in the school. I actually don't think both of these should be discussed. The LGBTQ and gender issues should be discussed the way they are, as fact, as if gender ideology is the truth. I think that's false, and I don't think it has any place in the public schools. But that's not what people are saying about these books. And nobody is saying, we want to ban your discussion of these topics. We're just sick and tired of you promoting these topics like they're the only topics worth talking about, the only books worth reading, the only books worth having assignments about. You would think if you were a child, there's no other literature. There's nothing else to read about but struggle and gay people. As a parent, please tell me what I should want. Books about complex topics teach children about the world around them and build empathy. No, they don't. No, they don't. Books about complex topics teach children about what the adults who stuck the book in their hand think about the complex topic. They don't teach you about the topic. They teach you what the author thinks about the topic. They teach you what the librarian thinks about the topic, what the teacher thinks about the topic, unless and until the teacher says Someone thinks this topic means X. What do you guys think? And opens the floor to any and all opinions and takes all comers and does not judge. That would mean that that if a kid in the class said, I think Penelope's whack. I don't think Penelope can be a boy. I think Penelope's a girl and Penelope's confused. And Penelope's mom needs to take Penelope to the therapist and or just keep on treating Penelope like she's just unique little Penelope until such time as she goes through puberty and figures it out herself. Okay? Pretty sure no version of that would be allowed in the classroom because that would be exclusive and hateful and terrible. So all they're learning about the complex topic is what the teacher thinks of it and the book author. That's it. So they don't really build empathy. They wouldn't build empathy even if they had all the, the discussion, although they'd get closer. Because the way you build empathy is when empathy is shown to you consistently and, like in a variety of different situations. And generally speaking, by the people closest to you, like your parents, your siblings, your grandparents, etc., your friends, not necessarily your teacher. Your teacher. Empathy isn't necessarily what I go to the teacher for, but to the extent that they should have empathy, it should be for the fact that I'm a child, not a miniature adult, and it's inappropriate for them to project their views onto me. And when they do, they're not showing me empathy. So how can I learn empathy from somebody who won't even model it? So this is all, excuse the expression, bullshit. And then we get to more, Penguin Classics gives you a list of books that are not banned at all, not even close, to talk to you about book bans. They're honoring the stories and voices that have been and continue to be silenced and censored. They're so silenced and censored. I'm looking at a stack of them right there. One was made, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 made into 8 made into movies. They were so silenced. They were made into movies, talkies even. And here, this is where we're going. This is where we're getting to. We're getting to, Moby Dick, if it was banned, which I think is very skeptical about that. It was probably like very localized and I don't even know what that's all about. But Haymarket Books, your source for all things subversive and communist. They're highlighting the unjust censorship of political books, which impacts countless incarcerated readers. They think it's wrong that people in jail can't read about how to overthrow the government and how awful the people are who put them in jail. Because that's what they need to know. They need to definitely know how they need to come out and be activists and fight for liberation. Right? So we've got, this is all of a sort. Teaching them to be, teaching even the people who are incarcerated that they are persecuted. And then this one. As we hurdle, do you feel hurdled into Banned Books Week? We're hurtling into Banned Books Week. I want to say this. The book banning occurring across the USA is not about the books. It's about institutionalizing discrimination against LGBTQ and BIPOC people. Institutionalizing misogyny through policing sexuality. What? You're institutionalizing misogyny by saying that men, biological men, can be women. And asking the federal government to codify that in Title IX. Yeah. You're institutionalizing misogyny every time you make it abundantly clear that a young girl is hateful and a bigot and a bully who should be reported if she says, I'm not really comfortable with that 16-year-old boy that keeps coming in the bathroom and the locker room with us because he's still a boy. He looks like a boy. I know he says his name is, Joanne or whatever, and goes by she, her, whatever, but she's 6 feet tall and I'm 5 feet tall and I'm in the bathroom and I'm not going in there. But now she's the bad one, the bully. But tell us more please, about institutionalizing misogyny because we want to take a look at some of the books you're putting in the schools that teach our kids that a boy can be a girl, a man can be a woman. It's a crisis. It's a crisis that can only be solved through local democracy. Organizing in your community, standing up for inclusion, except for you people who don't want these books. You're not included. Go bye-bye. And equity at school board meetings, supporting your teachers and librarians. Yes, voting in November all the way down the ballot. Because everybody knows your congressman is very concerned about what books you have in the library. What? All right. So now we're getting down to, I have like 5 minutes. So I got to wrap this up. Here's my suggestion. I'm not going to tell you to stop issuing challenges and stop asking for books to be restricted and all that. I'm not going to tell you to stop. Keep on keeping on. What I am going to do is tell you, question this banned book narrative. It's BS. They're demonstrably not banned. They're not banned. Okay. And I think we established that with this charming image that I showed you before. Let me get there. Okay. They're not banned, guys. Nobody's in danger. This is a pretty typical school library. This is middle school. Nobody's in danger of not being able to see all about race and stuff. Okay. There's no worries. Nobody's institutionalizing the inability to talk about these issues. So keep demanding better priorities. Keep questioning the culling of classics after 2 years out of circulation. Make them define what they mean by circulation and make them and ask them if they've even given these books a chance to circulate, because they haven't. It's a very sneaky little way to ban books they find problematic, to replace them with this garbage. Okay. But the other thing I want to encourage you to do is fight fire with fire. So as I suggested, as I showed you, when I showed you the list of 52, and I showed you my fledgling list, I'm going to go ahead and type it up and I'll make it available at some point soon. Come up with your own list of books that you want in the library or you want to know if are there, and start making some demands. And the reason I say that is that just this week was end of last week for Constitution Day, Moms for Liberty got just thousands of pocket constitutions. Theirs look prettier than this, but I have one. Here's mine. Okay. And they wanted to hand them out for Constitution Day to every student so that public school students around America could own their very, very own copy of the law of the land. There it is. And this one has the Declaration and the Constitution. I don't know what theirs had, but probably similar. And they were denied. They were turned down, turned away, robbed. In a couple of cases, they were told, we'll hand them out. They dropped off the boxes of the constitutions and they were not given out to the students and they were gone. So, and in a couple of cases, they were told, it's not part of the approved curriculum, so we're not going to be handing them out to the students. But you can donate them somewhere else if you want. Not part of the approved curriculum. Their claim is that the Constitution is made available to the students through other means in their textbook and here and there. That's a lie. The students are given access to parts of the Constitution. The students are given sort of a digested version. In some cases, it doesn't even show the Second Amendment, and it has lots of editorializing around it. They do not have the opportunity to own their very own copy that they could read at their own pace or go through with their parents or whatever. And every excuse they've been given for not giving it out is bogus and especially hypocritical, coming from, it's a crisis. They're banning books and we have to guard knowledge and the truth. And if we want a thriving, functioning democracy where people can vote. So demand that your own stuff be put in there. It's going to be like the Martha's Vineyard of books. I'm serious. Take a page out of DeSantis's playbook. He did the very best thing. He said, we're going to stop asking you to close the border. We're going to stop showing you the border towns being destroyed. We're going to stop giving you the data and showing you all the problems, whatever, because you obviously don't care and you're fine with it. Worse than don't care. You love it. You think it's great that these towns are just being overrun and invaded and people can't, are just suffering. Okay. You think it's fabulous. Well, what about when it happens to you? Okay, this is the same thing. This is your little migrant. This is your migrant worker being put on a plane, sent to Martha's Vineyard. The school library is Martha's Vineyard. Okay? So think about ways that you can start pushing back on those librarians to get more books in. And thoroughly document every time they say no. Get it in writing. Reframe what they said. So are you telling me you will not put this book, you will not consider putting this book in the library because get them to say so. That is my suggestion, because nothing will blow open the lie and the hypocrisy better. So I thank you guys for coming tonight. I do have to take off now that it's 7:00. If you would be so kind, please, as to like, share, comment, subscribe if you have not already done so. Please consider supporting the channel any which way you can. And I will see you back next Sunday for another episode of Dissident Dispatch. Have a great rest of your week.